Welcome to Shooting Straight, MMF.com. I'm Frank Miniature, the editor-in-chief. The editor is America's First Freedom. Today we're speaking to Dr. Tim Wheeler, retired ear, nose, and throat specialist and past director of Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. Now, Tim, you approached us because a major national organization of ear, nose, and throat specialists has endorsed suppressors as hearing safety devices for us in this nation. I'm curious how that began. Did it begin as part of what you did when you were the director of the Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, or you started? How did this begin?
Well, Frank, this position statement that was approved just in November by the American Academy of Otolaryngology, Head and Neck Surgery, began with a project in Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership back in 2017. It was then that a group of my fellow ear surgeons and I got together and wrote a white paper, sort of a mini scientific paper and policy paper that dug a little deeper into the science than this Academy proposal. It described the pathology, what actually happens in your inner ear hearing organ when it's exposed unprotected to the very loud impulse noise of a firearm muzzle blast. And in that policy paper or white paper, we also recommended deregulating suppressors and making them widely available to the public. And so fast forward to last summer, and because of a change in the way the Academy processed these position statements, we took advantage of that and drafted a position statement for the Academy asking them to endorse firearm suppressors for hearing preservation. And we were notified in November that they had accepted it. So now it's official policy of the largest professional society of ear specialists in the country.
Yeah. Is there a board with this Academy that voted to approve this, or how did that work?
It was an interesting process, Frank. We submitted the proposal, I want to say right at the beginning of August, maybe it was the beginning of July, but over the summer, the proposal was, our position statement was examined and debated and discussed and modified, edited a little bit by two committees of the Academy, their hearing committee and another committee that all proposals go through. And then after those two committees had processed our proposal and it had gone through this process, it went to the board of directors of the Academy for final approval. And as I said, we were notified in late November that they had approved it and it was official policy.
Yeah. The medical establishment hasn't always been very supportive of the right to keep and bear arms in various ways. I usually take that to be the ignorance that they're walking. They just don't know enough about the topic, and they're probably just not experienced gun owners and just haven't been exposed to that culture. But in this case, I'm looking at it, and you followed the science. And I haven't asked you yet if you're a gun owner or not, but you followed the science here, or this group, you and this group did, to see what can actually protect our hearing. And muffling the barrel on a firearm is just a rational scientific thing to do. And that's what I saw in your paper. You brought this out. But I'm surprised that it's, well, I guess I'm not surprised in I'm doing what I do, but it is surprising to me, or it should be, that this hasn't been more embraced by the medical establishment. Why did it take so long? And is this a start of a change?
Those are very good questions, Frank, and questions that I've been very much involved with over the last 3 decades in my work with Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership. As you may know, I've worked with NRA in the past many years ago with ILA, with various public relations people and NRA and ILA on this very issue of public health, what I'll call the public health jihad or campaign against gun owners. And I don't think that's too strong a word, because if you go back to, and you can see some of the writings on our website, drgo.us, what was going on back in the mid and late 90s and beyond in the public health community amounted to an assault on our Second Amendment rights. And you can see how it was back then. Some of the leaders of the public health community made some very honest and upfront statements that they were going to try to portray gun ownership as some kind of disease and guns as a virus that had to be eradicated, in the words of one of those public health anti-gunners. So because of this history, my fellow ENT docs around the country and I were pleasantly surprised when the Academy adopted this position. And oh yeah, by the way, we're all big gunnies and huge Second Amendment supporters, every last one of us. And one of us is also a past president of the American Otological Society, which is the oldest society of ear specialists, subspecialists in the country, even older than the NRA by 3 years. These are the people who wrote this. And so we had a pretty good group and a pretty solid scientific basis for making this position statement. Do I think that this heralds the beginning of a change of attitude in the medical community about gun ownership? Might be too early to say, but I think it's promising.
Right. It seems to me to be a dereliction of duty not to embrace suppressors. It lowers the decibel level, what an average of 30, which it doesn't mean you don't have to wear hearing protection, but it does take you out of the danger zone with a lot of calibers and loads. So it's just a rational response to me. I'm wondering, what pushback did you feel, or any? Maybe this now the doctors are ready for it, and at least in this specialty.
I think it's a combination of factors, Frank, and you kind of touched on one of them, and that is simply that suppressors have become much more common, have been deregulated in some states for hunting and for all purposes in a few others, to the point where now 42 states have no ban on suppressors. They're legalized in one form or another. The 8 holdout states are the ones you might expect, your California, your Illinois, and so on. I think that it's really it's such an obvious public health prevention tool. It's a classic public health intervention. And the specialists who at the Academy who reviewed our proposal, to their credit, did their homework. And I think they realized and understood that this was something that they really couldn't resist, even if they wanted to. And I'm sure there are a few academic holdouts who still want to have nothing to do with firearms in any way, shape, or form. Those folks, I think, no longer are holding sway as much as they used to.
I first came across this about 20 years ago in Finland. I was shooting with a gun company called Sako, and they brought out the rifles to try, and they all had suppressors on them. And I thought, cool, they have suppressors. So I said it out loud, and they said, well, of course they do. It's not polite to shoot without a suppressor on. What about your neighbor? What about the sound pollution? No, let's be polite. And I thought, well, that's smart. Thank you. So that you're ahead of this change, and seeing this happen. Are you speaking to Congress at all? Have you lobbied at all? Have you been on the Hill to meet with congressmen to see where legislation is going on this?
It hasn't gotten to that point yet, Frank. I think, as many of our readers may know and viewers, the Hearing Protection Act has been sort of in the wings for several years. It's been up for consideration, never really got anywhere, but it is still very much alive. And we expect that, we hope that at least that sometime this session, the Hearing Protection Act will be revived. We'll start going through committee again. And we hope with President Trump in office and the newly constituted Congress that the Hearing Protection Act has a chance of passage this time and becoming law, which would be great because it would deregulate suppressors and make this vital public health intervention available without having to buy a tax stamp. How 1800s does that sound?
Right, it's 1934, right? The Firearms Protection
Yes.
Act.
It's just such an antiquated concept. And, it's a very interesting history as to how it was included in the National Firearms Act of 1934, suppressor, making them regulated. But President Trump and the new Congress are going to have a lot on their plate. We hope the Hearing Protection Act is one of those items, and they take it up again.
Now, you wrote a feature for America's First Freedom on this topic. And one thing in there, I thought I knew everything about this topic. One thing I didn't know was that even with my earplugs in, all my hearing protection on, that my hearing could still be impacted because of my bone structure from a loud gun report. Tell us about that.
Yeah, that gets into the weeds a little bit in the sound science. But what happens, and we included this in our research articles supporting our proposal. The sound signature of a firearm going off around the muzzle blast from that ignition of a round produces over just a few milliseconds a sound signature that's really intense. It's somewhere between 155 and 100 decibel and 170 decibels, 155 to 170 decibels for most common handgun and rifle cartridges. Keep that in mind, because any kind of loud noise or any noise over about 40 decibels can be conducted into the inner ear, right through the bone of your skull. In other words, it doesn't have to be conducted through your ear canal and then vibrate the eardrum and the three little bones and then be transmitted that way into the inner ear fluids. It just goes bang, straight, through the skull into and bypasses the middle ear sound conduction system. And so the bottom line is that loud noises, as you said, can enter the inner ear and damage the inner ear by going around earplugs or ear muffs and going directly through bone conduction into your inner ear. And that makes it all the more important to suppress the loud noise at its source, which, of course, is what a firearm suppressor does.
It's funny. I've shot 50 BMG before in long range schools, up to 1,000 yards. And that's the way it feels. You feel your whole body get rocked, even though all the hearing protection is on and doubled up. You feel your whole body rocked, and it almost feels like a concussion hits you. I mean, it isn't quite that much of a force, but then I can actually hear my ears ringing, even though I had all that stuff on. So I'm guessing that's what happened. It came through my bones into my inner ear.
Yes, when you hear your ears ringing like that, Frank, that's your inner ear, your cochlea saying, that hurts, please don't do that anymore. We've all had that experience, coming home from the range, hopefully not coming home from the range, unless you're lucky enough to have friends who have BMG rifles, and you can enjoy that fun. But any other loud noise, loud music can do it, construction noise, there's all kinds of environmental noise, and man-made, most of it is man-made, of course, that can cause that kind of damage. It's everywhere. Any ear, nose, and throat doctor is going to see countless people in various occupations where noise exposure is a feature. All of those occupations I mentioned, your construction, law enforcement, just sport shooting and hunting, who have noise-induced hearing loss, and we can measure that on an audiogram. It should be mostly preventable by using suppressors and ear-level hearing protection, such as plugs and muffs.
Right. The old joke at the NRA is the NRA handshake is this. Because back in the day, people didn't even wear hearing protection. When I grew up in the 70s, it wasn't that common. And it became more common, thank goodness, NRA teaching. And now we all wear it. But this is the next step in that level, muffling your firearm when you can, which you can't always do. So you said you're not that involved yet in the advocacy for this, but I'm hoping you stay involved. You're speaking out to the media. Here you are at America's First Freedom. I hope you're doing other media, because the word here needs to get out.
We are doing other media indeed. We made a conscious effort to roll this out as soon as it happened in November. Various shooter outlets online and paper and otherwise are continuing to come out with feature articles on it. And the business about advocacy comes later. And it comes when Congress is in session in a favorable situation. We certainly would hope to hear from NRA, from any other organized groups of shooters, people in the industry, when it comes time to present our case in congressional committee. And we certainly plan to have people available to provide that testimony. It's going to be powerful testimony too. When the largest professional society of ear specialists in the country endorses suppressors for hearing preservation, Congress members should listen to that.
They should, but it's the public they're going to really listen to. And there's a lot of misinformed people still out there. They've just seen so many movies where a bad guy suddenly screws on a suppressor and then he kills somebody, an assassin type thing. And that's the experience people have with this technology, as old as it is. Of course, they're very rarely used in crimes, and that data is important to cite as well. But that public perception needs to be overcome. So I'm very good to hear that you and others are out there as doctors talking about the hearing loss that real people are going through.
And I think it's worth noting too, Frank, that the Academy, especially the officers at the Academy and the committee members who approve these position statements, these are professionals. They know everything we know that we authors knew about hearing protection. But I am pretty sure that their understanding of suppressors was no better than that average member of the public you're talking about, who draws their understanding or their knowledge about suppressors from TV and the movies. But I think our position statement proposal spurred them to learn more about it. And I think that as more of the word gets out in some of these, in the media and perhaps with the Hearing Protection Act, I think the public will learn pretty quickly.
Now, where could people go to follow you, to find out more about you, and especially to find your mission statement on this topic?
Probably the best, even though I am retired from Doctors for Responsible Gun Ownership, that would be the best place to go, drgo.us. And our editor of the website now, Dr. Rob Young, he's a psychiatrist, a clinical professor of psychiatry at University of Rochester. He will be following this on the website, and people can follow what we are doing on the website to promote suppressors as public policy. And that's drgo.us.
Thank you, Tim.
Well, thank you, Frank.